Hi there, I'm Lucy from Japan. Today I'm going to tell you a very scary and very sad story. It is about serial death of Kei Komoro's father and grandparents. Kei Komuro is the husband of Japanese ex-Princess Mako, who got married October last year. You may know that many Japanese opposed this marriage, and some people think the reason for our opposition is that Kei Komuro is raised by the single mother, and the mother had financial trouble with her ex-fiancé. But I believe more important reason of opposition is that Kei's family's mysterious serial death of his father and grandparents. And some tabloid reports that Kei Komoro's mother might be involved in their death. The source of today's story is primarily the Japanese weekly tabloid News Post 7. The contents of this article is really scary, and many Japanese were super disgusted with such a mother and son would be related to the imperial family. If you know this story, people would say no to this marriage, even if it is not the marriage of princess, but the marriage of commoner. I have no proof as to whether this story is totally true or not, but as long as a weekly tabloid reported about it, I'm sure they did enough investigation to double-check if all the information is true prior to this article was released. Because if this story is a lie, it would be a serious defamation against Kei Komuro and his mother. So the publisher of this tabloid would probably be sued by the Komuro family for defamation. And it will be a huge damage and loss of money for the publisher, so they will never make such a mistake. And so far, the Komuro family and the Imperial Household Agency has taken no legal action regarding this article. I think this article has some credibility. So let's get started. This is a family tree of Kei Komuro, and as shown in this chart, Kei Komoro's father and grandparents died consecutively from 2002 to 2003 when Kei Komuro was around 10 years old. Is this just a coincidence? According to some reports, Kayo Komuro, Kei Komoro's mother, was involved in the death of her husband and parents-in-law. The death of Kei Komoro's father. First, let's talk about the death of Kei Komoro's father. What kind of person was Kei Komoro's father? He was Toshikatsu Komuro. After graduating from Meiji University with a degree in architecture from the School of Science and Engineering, he worked for Yokohama City Hall since 1988. Toshikatsu's family is a branch of a large local landowner. The Komuro family, the main family line, had a large condominium and they owned several apartments and parking lot. So Toshikatsu's family owned land and property, and Toshikatsu himself had a stable job as a civil officer, which might have made him a target for Kayo. Around 1990, he married Kayo. The following year, 5th of October 1991, the son Kei Komuro was born. Several years later, they moved to Kunitachi City, Tokyo, to accommodate Kei Komoro's entrance into the elementary school attached to the Kunitachi College of Music. With this move, he had to leave home 6 a.m. to work and returned home after Kei Komoro's bedtime for about 4 years. It takes about 1 hour and 20 to 30 minutes from Kunitachi Station to Yokohama City Hall, depending on the train schedule. It would take even longer if the distance from Kunitachi Station to the apartment was far. This was a big burden for Toshikatsu. Furthermore, in addition to the apartment in Kunitachi City, Toshikatsu purchased a condominium in Yokohama City and allowed Kayo's parents to live there. And in this condominium, Kayo and her father is still living. Around the same summer of 2001, Toshikatsu became sick. He also began to have problems at work, such as not being able to do the work he wanted due to a change in department and not being able to communicate with his boss. Around the same time, they proceeded with the construction of their own house, but the budget was exceeded because Kayo Komuro was too elaborate in furniture and interior design. Toshikatsu had received financial support from his parents for the construction fee of his new house. Then Toshikatsu's mother and Kayo had a big dispute over the budget. Toshikatsu's sick became worse and he returned to his parents' home for recovery. But one day, Kayo picked him up with Kei and returned to their apartment in Kunitachi. Shortly thereafter, Kei Komuro's father, Toshikatsu, took his own life in 2002. Toshikatsu left his home before dawn and never returned. More than 24 hours have passed without his return, leaving him in his pajamas and slippers. No matter how much they searched around his home with the help of some relatives and friends, they could not find him. The next day, a call came from the local police station. The police said that Toshikatsu had tried to burn himself to death on the bank of the Tama River. Shortly before that, seeing Toshikatsu looking so exhausted, some of his friends recommended that he should go to the psychosomatic clinic, but Kayo said, "It's up to him not to go to the hospital." And on New Year's Day in 2002, she left her husband at home alone and returned to her parents' home with Kei. A friend who knows Komuro family well said, "She left her husband alone, who was suffering from a nervous breakdown, and went back to her parents' home. She had no consideration for her husband." They left Toshikatsu, who was suffering from a nervous breakdown, behind and headed for a boyfriend, whom Kayo called the man of her destiny, and young Kei called the father of Shonan. And the three of them were enjoying a New Year's drive date together. I call her boyfriend as Mr. Y. The friend who knows the Komuro family well continues with a surprising explanation. According to what Kayo told me, Mr. Y is one of Toshikatsu's childhood friends. He lived in the United States for a long time because of his work, and Kayo said happily, Mr. Y is rich and drives a convertible. Mr. Y came back to Japan when Kei Komuro had just been born. At the time, Toshikatsu and Kayo were living in official residence of Yokohama City Hall. They met for the first time when Mr. Y came to see Toshikatsu upon his return to Japan. Kayo recalls, "When I said hello to Mr. Y at the door with baby Kei in my arms, our eyes met. At that moment, I knew we were meant for each other. Since then, they have been calling each other fate." Calling her husband childhood friends the man of destiny may seem strange to many people. Also, Kayo made Kei call him the father of Shonan because Mr. Y lived in Shonan at the time. It was surprising that she let her child call her boyfriend as father in the first place, said the friend. Mr. Y, Kayo, and Kei often went out for a drive date. I heard that they went to the Shonan area and were treated to dinner. It must have been a regular date for Kayo and Kei to leave Toshikatsu behind on New Year's Day and go for a drive date. Mr. Y was a skin-white and skinny man, and he gave us the impression of a wealthy lifestyle. I met him at Toshikatsu's funeral. Mr. Y was mourning Toshikatsu's death as a childhood friend, while the three of them went for a drive date with Kayo and Kei. A member of the Komuro family also said he saw Mr. Y attending the funeral. When Toshikatsu left home late at night in March 2002 and died, Mr. Y also searched for him for several days until his dead body was found. But at the same time, he had an unusual relationship with Toshikatsu's wife and child. Kayo even said, "If Toshikatsu died, I will not be able to live alone." So when Toshikatsu's funeral was over, the friends thought Kayo would live with Mr. Y, and he asked Kayo what she was going to do about her relationship with Mr. Y. Then Kayo gave him an unexpected answer. She said, "Since Toshikatsu did such a sickening thing as committing suicide, we talked it over and decided not to see each other anymore." A friend who knew the Komuro family well also said, "I remember Kayo often used the words sickening in reference to her husband's suicide. In one of the rooms of Komuro's home, there was a queen-size bed for Toshikatsu and Kayo. She said she wanted to get rid of the bed because it was disgusting that someone who had committed suicide had slept on it." An elementary school official said that Kayo immediately cut ties with Mr. Y, who reminded her of the suicide, and began dating another man. A source at the elementary school said less than a year after Toshikatsu's death, Kayo attended a music recital hand in hand with new boyfriend. Even before that, they had been seen walking arm in arm in a city center, and I remember rumors spreading among the parents. "Oh my God, she's already with someone else." After Toshikatsu disappeared, I told Kayo that I thought it would be better to contact the police, but she replied, "If we do, all sorts of things will come out and Kei will be worried, so I won't do it." I thought there might be a reason for this, but after a night of searching without finding him, I urged her to contact the police again, but she again said no. Perhaps she was concerned about public opinion, but I still regret that Toshikatsu might have survived if I had called the police, even if I had to force her to do so. Kei's father's suicide has forgiven the mortgage on his condominium. It is also said that a large amount of life insurance was paid to Kayo and Kei Komuro. The death of Kei Komuro's grandfather. Just 1 week after Toshikatsu's death, Kei Komuro's grandfather committed suicide. The cause of this suicide is said to be that Kayo Komuro pushed her father-in-law into a corner, according to information in the weekly tabloid. This was the night before Toshikatsu committed suicide. While relatives and friends were searching for Toshikatsu, who had disappeared, Kayo suddenly stood up and began yelling at her father-in-law in a loud voice. "I'm sure Toshikatsu is committing suicide. It's all your fault." More yelling pierced the head of Kei's grandfather, who was staring at the floor and enduring the situation without retorting. "Toshikatsu must kill himself because of your lack of love." The little grandfather's back became smaller and smaller with each shout of abuse, like a machine reacting to Kayo's loud voice. The yelling stopped only after a family member intervened. Toshikatsu's parents were so exhausted by the fact that their son had to end his short life at the age of 38, according to a source close to the Komuro family. Both parents were very cheerful people, but Toshikatsu's father in particular was so exhausted that he couldn't eat at all. After the funeral was over, his father also committed suicide. Inheritance and the death of Kei Komuro's grandmother. A chain of tragedies struck the family. Immediately after that, Kayo took an unexpected action. At the time, Toshikatsu's mother was at her physical and mental limits due to the successive deaths of her eldest son and husband. Then a man claiming to be an acquaintance of Kayo's contacted her. He told her that if Kayo's father-in-law had died, his grandson Kei had the right to inherit the property, and he wanted to negotiate with her. This acquaintance was a former gangster. The relatives were wondering how he could talk to Kayo's mother-in-law, who was still grieving, about such a matter. One of the relatives muttered, "Kayo is really scary." Later, a meeting was held at Toshikazu's parents' home to discuss the inheritance. In attendance were Toshikazu's mother, younger brother, and a male acquaintance of Kayo. And as a result, Kei was to inherit a substantial amount of cash. As soon as Kei received his inheritance, Kayo suddenly told the former gangster, without a word of appreciation, to get out of this matter, and they have no contact ever since. Kei's grandmother was a strong and cheerful person. However, about a year after the death of her son and husband, she followed in their footsteps and took her own life. All three now rest in Komuro family grave. So, how do you think, you guys? Was it a coincidence that Kei Komuro's father and grandparents died in such a low, or were they involved in some kind of accident? Kei Komuro's father had a younger brother, and the Komuro family also has relatives in the main family. However, even on the prestigious occasion of Kei Komuro's marriage to the imperial princess, no relatives from Kei's father's side showed up. It is clear that Kayo and Kei Komuro are insulated from his father's relatives. Because of this very mysterious series of deaths, many Japanese thought that Kei Komuro and his mother were very dangerous and opposed to the marriage of Kei and ex-Princess Mako. Other stories of Kei Komuro will still go on, so please watch the next video. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like the video. And if you want to see more truths of Japanese imperial family, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.